Greetings and welcome to Chapter 8. As I'd mentioned before, I'm opening up Chapter 8, Chapter 7 quizzes for you to get the opportunity to listen to the lecture and then retake the quiz if you're not happy with this score. I want to make sure you guys are getting the most out of this course. And with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into Chapter 8. So in this chapter, what we're going to do is look at traditional media channels. That means we're going to look at television ads, or talk about radio ads, outdoor media, print media for magazine and newspapers, all of which I've had the opportunity to utilize in our marketing efforts for some of the businesses there in Rochester. And like all chapters, I'll kind of speak to what I've found helpful in these channels. Now, keep in mind that each channel is kind of unique to each industry and each organization. So um, there are general applications that apply across the board, but there's differences as well. We just need to recognize that. So when you think of TV commercials, you probably think about the Super Bowl ad and the buzz that takes place there, particularly GoDaddy years ago when they had an overtly sexual um, ad. Let's see here. Colors, keep the current scheme, but ask me again if my computer continues. Keep the color screen. Don't show the message. Beg your pardon, there was a message that popped up here on the screen. Anyways, so when we talk about TV ads, this is a very popular example. It created a lot of buzz and really had an effect on the population that few other avenues would have, such as perhaps a radio ad or even a pay-per-click ad. The power of television is that it combines a rich multimedia experience on a very large platform, meaning people get to see it. And if you target it accordingly, a lot of people get to see it. So in this chapter, we'll talk about some of the strategies utilized in purchasing the different media channels. We'll describe how people choose them, how people measure effectiveness regarding some of their campaigns, and really the marketer and how he or she uses these channels for inside their toolkit to communicate the message for the company that they work for. So, when we talk about traditional media channels, as an overview, we're going to talk about the nature of media strategy. Individuals who actually operate within this context, such as media buyers, those who plan, the choices that they make, and whether you're B2C or B2B. Um, and a number of other things that we've covered in the past. Media strategy really involves analyzing and choosing the media for an advertisement or promotional campaign that best speaks to the potential customer. And this can be hard, matching the target audience to the media that they use can be challenging. When we talk about media planning, it begins with a careful analysis of the target market. It involves understanding the process they use in making purchases, in consumer behavior, and really the trends that are appearing there. It involves studying the media choices the target audience makes and understands basically their viewing habits or media habits. To match the media to the target market requires understanding the target market. Shocking. And some of these are exposure that you've maybe have experienced, such as listening to your favorite news radio show in the morning, driving to RCTC or to work. I used to listen to Mike and Mike when I would drive to work until 15:20 the ticket cut off and they put somebody else on. But for those who wanted to reach me and my demographic, who was interested in talk radio and sports radio, they'd probably put an ad there. A lot of those ads were targeted towards males and things that we were interested in. So they were talking a lot about, opening up a franchise for haircut, barbershops, more or less, and things of that nature. Um, Now, when we talk about composing the media plan again, uh, you have to analyze a comprehensive set of data, if you will. Um, an advertising analyst has to understand who they're trying to reach And the media strategy spells out the media to be used and the creative that needs to be considered, if you will. The media schedule notes when ads will appear in individual media vehicles. The media planning concludes with a justification and summary of the plan, more or less. And this is the general flow. Now, the media planner formulates this program stating when and where ads will be placed. And these planners work closely with the creative staff, the account executive, the account planners, and the people who actually make the purchases. The creative needs to know which media will be used and when the media will be displayed and what vehicle it will be used for. So it's really a group of people. In larger organizations like Hormel or even the Mayo Clinic or you pick your Fortune 500 company, there's a big team. In smaller organizations, there's people like me who have to work with operations, who select the media that's being purchased, and rely heavily on vendors to supplement any core skills that would be required that perhaps I don't have or people who don't have themselves. So when I was working for the Kaler Suites, Marriott, Residence Inn, International, and all their restaurants. And we were doing commercials for our hotels. I had to quickly learn a lot of these elements that we've talked about, essentially identifying how to make the media purchase. We ended up going with Charter because they had a pretty good deal for television ads. I mean, it only cost us, I think, about $2 an ad because we purchased chunks of ads and we would do it over a 3-month period more or less. We would also fill up space in Iowa, and the way we kind of utilize our strategies, we took a look at our drive market. Who would come to Rochester and stay at our hotels because the Mayo Clinic is there? Where will they come from? What type of things would they watch? So I would look at the web analytics to see where our visits were coming from a geographic standpoint. We'd cross-reference it with our on-property management system to identify the addresses that people were giving when they were checking in, and we kind of drew a general map, and then we deployed against it essentially. When we talk about the planning process, again, there's a number of elements that need to be taken into consideration, but at the heart of it, understanding of the target market really is critical. This is an example of New Balance that was placed in Runner's World magazine by the media planner. The target audience for New Balance shoes matches individuals who probably read Runner's World. The media buyer would be an individual who actually purchased the space in the magazine. Media buyers actually purchase space and negotiate rates for ads, and to some extent that's what I had to do. When we talk about lower costs, we would have to essentially get increased volume through these channels, or we would pit the channels against one another and say, Charter's offering us this, but we have other venues, and we try to negotiate because it's a general process of negotiation to some extent. Now, some terminology you have to be familiar with. It is reach, frequency, opportunities, gross rating points, and all of these are just essentially metrics that are utilized to negotiate and understand the performance of your ads, more or less. When we talk about cost, there's a couple different ways you can look at it. The more traditional approach is cost per thousand, and that's a simple metric. Most people know how many magazines are read for their particular publication, or newspapers from the Post Bulletin, or well, TV shows and people watching them on Charter. And there's a couple other ones you can look at, ratings for rating points, and really all it is just looking at the cost, and then you pick the metric, whether it's impressions, whether it's rating points, and the process boils it down to understanding how much does it cost per given action, more or less. And then you spread that across publications. So Rochester Magazine, an ad in that magazine will probably cost you between $800 to say $1,200 to $1,500 per publication. Um, and for some companies like hers, it was a great publication because they got regular business off of it. For the Wicked Moose that I worked for a while back, not really so much. We tried it, but wasn't really that kind of vehicle for us. The Post Bulletin was great. We purchased an ad block for about 14 or 21,000 for the entire year. But the benefit is that we would get an ad that would be displayed on a regular basis in their Monday through Friday newspaper ads, and we could switch it around between the different properties that we had. Now this table shows weighted cost per thousand impressions, if you will, which is an advertising cost, and there's a formula that goes into it. You can measure these things 100 different ways, but at the end of the day, what you have to try to understand is how much is it costing me? Am I reaching my target audience? And how can I explain this investment, more or less? Regarding exposure theory, there's a number of them that are out there. But at the end of the day, when we look at the consumer base in today's context, you have to really approach things through a integrated multi-channel approach, whereby if you're going to show something on TV, you probably should put it on YouTube too. If you're going to show something on YouTube, you should probably have it on your website, and go across the channels and ensure there's consistency across the board for it. Even radio ads, having that same type of message spreading across the channels helps you to achieve an impression, a lasting impression, more or less, for the organization that you're advertising for. Now, you can look at brand recognition or you can look at brand recall, and the emphasis is slightly different. For brand recognition, the emphasis is on visualization of the product presentation and being able to identify the brand itself. So when you drive into town and you see a Marriott sign, to some extent, you don't even have to read the entire word Marriott. As soon as you see that red M, boom, you know it's probably a Marriott. Or probably more identifiable would be like McDonald's. You see that golden arch, boom, you know it's McDonald's, more or less. Now brand recall, that's a little bit different. Frequency is important, and to some extent it plays a significant role. Repetition is important. Depending on what type of organization you are, you might focus on brand recognition or brand recall. In the hospitality industry, we want to try to focus on a little bit of both, but depending on its um, business segment, we might lean one way or another. For instance, if you're an independent hotel in Rochester, you want to focus on brand recall to be able to have people see your hotel and remember it when they come back. If you're a say Keurig coffee distributor, you want brand recognition. You want your coffee pods to be separated from essentially the others. And there's different goals again with each one. And we can look at this table and see that depending on what you're trying to achieve, you might implement a different type of media selection. For television or radio or newspaper, your goals are important. But let's get a little more granular here. So television advertising, what are the advantages? Again, like I said, it's got a wide reach. The frequency is there if you invest in it. It's not that expensive, as I mentioned, about $2 an ad if you buy enough of them through Charter. Granted, you're probably spending, close to $2,000 or $5,000 a month, but when you look at the frequency and you break it down, it can be right around that price point. Um, and there's a lot of options as far as media is concerned. The problem is that unless you have a great ad or you've segmented your customer base very efficiently, there's a lot of clutter to break through. There's a lot of commercials, and most people skip them now with their DVRs, and most people don't even watch it. Like me, I don't have a TV. I don't watch TV. I watch Netflix, I watch YouTube, I watch Hulu, Amazon Prime, but I don't have a TV. So, to some extent, I guess I'm a bad marketer because I don't know what my audience is using. But to that point, television has that drawback. And again, that's why you have to take a multi-channel approach when you're advertising. Um, and I think we've kind of covered the whole process. Oh, I guess another important point about this is that television commercials aren't exactly cheap. I mean, you're spending say $2,000 to $5,000 a month on television advertising. On top of that, you actually have to have something to advertise, and you might have to create a commercial. And that's going to cost you anywhere between $2,000 to $10,000 plus, depending on the length of the commercial. And I'm talking about our local market, Rochester. I'm not even going to touch your bigger markets because, frankly, I don't know how much it costs some of those commercials to be produced. And for a small business, that's a lot of money. There's Nielsen ratings. I won't go into the boring calculations there, but it's just another metric, if you will, to essentially understand the performance of your actual product. When we look at different ad buys for American Idol, Sunday Night Football, what you're looking at is probably national ad buys here. I know it's national ad buys because it's going to be shown across the entire continent, if you will. These figures it was from 2010, so clearly they've gone up in the last 4 years. But for a local market, again, you can get away with that add-on charter because they always segment a small part of these TV shows for local advertisement. You're always going to get your brands advertising it, like Bud Light, Budweiser, your car companies, Toyota, but there's usually always room for a little guy in the local market. Um, Now, the primary rating provider is AC Nielsen. In addition to national ratings, they also provide ratings for your DMA, essentially, your market more or less. And the data is generated through a number of different metrics. Demographic information can be obtained, and it's a great resource if you want to try to identify geographic location for your television commercials. Um, as we talked about, local and regional television is excellent for local and regional companies. National brands can advertise on these stations through purchasing ad spots on a much higher level. About 75% of national time slots are sold during sweepstakes week by selecting local channels to supplement the national time. Companies can really generate higher GRPs at a lower cost, if you will. Now, an effective television advertising, it requires matching the product and the target audience that's watching the television show. Uh, Consumers are spending more time online and less time watching TV. I guess I'm one of those people who don't even own a TV. But for social media users, the time spent watching TV is actually interesting because it's been found that 75% of consumers multitask while they watch TV. And you either do it on your phone, you do it on your computer. I actually am doing it from time to time too. I've got my laptop up, I'm watching Intelligence on CBS, and a commercial comes up, I whip out my phone and I'm surfing the net looking at NFL.com or something like that. So again, taking a multi-channel approach is ideal, if you will. You can post ads on YouTube through the AdWords platform. So one way to do it is, if you're a wedding planner, go ahead and create a short video, choose television buys or really ad buys through AdWords, and you can run your 30-second commercial on YouTube. as people search for different videos to watch, if you will. We talked a little bit about Super Bowl advertisement. It's really the biggest advertising event of the year, where millions of dollars is spent on ad buys, and it's a big draw, and it's become quite the event. Now, looking at other forms, you got radio advertising. When I worked for Carpet One, The Wicked Moose, Massage Envy, Cinnabon, and Auntie Anne's in Rochester, we would do some radio buys. We call them spots. So we would pick a radio station. Like, again, we might pick 1520 the ticket, and every hour we would get the opportunity to run a 10-second ad. I think the cost was around $800 a month, but you're talking about in a day, 24 hours, 10 seconds every single hour. A great opportunity for radio ad plays. So for a company like Carpet One, who has to compete with Home Depot, Lowe's, and you pick the next carpet location or really big box stores, this was a great way to get your name out there in the local community, and you can drive sales through this process. And most people who are listening to radio are trapped. They are driving to work or stuck in traffic. Well, you're in Rochester. You don't have any traffic. I'm here in Atlanta. Tons of traffic. But you have a captive audience to some degree. Now, we've actually explored online radio advertising with Pandora. It was gangbusters. It cost us, again, about $2,000 a month for our wedding ads, but people were surprised to hear the Kayla advertising on Pandora because it was a local ad versus a national ad, which people were accustomed to. It really caught people's attention more or less. Now, outdoor media is more than just billboards. It includes cabs, buses, and really anywhere outside. When we used to do advertising on the billboards, I think it cost us, again, seems like the magic number is about $2,000 a month now that I continue to hear myself say this out loud, but that was about it. But there was a commitment. I think it was a 3-month commitment. So, I mean, the total ad purchase was close to $3,000. Well, actually, be closer to 6 if it was 3 months. But I can do math. Don't worry. There was some benefit because it was specific to the geographic location. They say low cost per impression, but it's really hard to measure that. You have no idea as people are driving by 52 at 70 miles per hour, how many people actually look up. I happen to look up at all of them just because I'm a marketing guy and I like to look at advertisement. But my wife next to me or the people in the car, I'm not sure if they even notice, if you will. It's short exposure time because you're talking about maybe 10 seconds max, if that. I'm assuming you're staring at it from like close to a mile away, which sometimes what I do. But it's probably even less for people who just kind of look up and say, huh, what? That was a billboard? Okay. And there's little segmentation, and there's a lot of clutter that you have to try to break through. Now, when you talk about advertising for outdoor platforms, usually services and amusements, parks spend a lot of it. Transportation, hotels, and resorts, we kind of do. But you see the general breakdown here, if you will. This is an example of outdoor advertising. They've gotten creative with some of this stuff where they're actually using billboards that change, where you got the digital ones that are in Rochester in certain areas. And you can get pretty creative with some of these billboards and pretty racy. I'm not going to name any of them, but there's some health ones out there if you pay attention regarding the need for colonoscopies. Anyways, focusing on magazine advertising. It's a great platform if you are targeting a specific demographic, because if you're picking up Rochester Magazine, you're probably doing it because you fall into a certain demographic that reads that magazine. And it sounds like an obvious statement when I say it out loud, but if we're advertising weddings, that's the spot to do it, because we know that a majority of the people who are going to read that magazine are the target demographic, females between the ages of maybe 18 to 45, give or take.
and it's going to be popular. Rochester Women Magazine is even more segmented magazine, and there's a lot of advantages to that. This disadvantage is there's a decline in readership. There's a lot of clutter to break through, and like I said, it's not cheap to advertise on a magazine, because you have to do the production of the ad, you have to um, give the ad to, or rather, buy the spot. And actually, now that I think about it, a lot of our ads are produced by the media provider themselves. So if you buy an ad for $2,000, they typically can design the graphic for you. For newspaper, there's advantages similar to the magazine, disadvantages, poor um, audience retention over time, more or less. Um, and you really have to identify your target base and mix the media that you're going to be purchasing and selecting, more or less. Now, when you look at this graph, it really illustrates multimedia use by a company like Coca-Cola, where a lot of their money spent on television, and their media buy is vast. I mean, they've got one of the biggest budgets out there. And they also spend money on radio, outdoor, internet, magazine, and newspapers. And these tend to shift over time too. When you're looking at developing logical combinations of these purchases, if you will, it takes planning. It starts by again understanding your target market and leveraging the different opportunities. You don't have the hyper targeting capabilities that I showed you in AdWords when you're looking at these types of things. Now, in B2B, um, it's a different animal because there's not a lot of advertisement generally in this context. You might see a little bit more of it now on TV. You might see a little bit more now in magazines, but a lot of B2B spend their money in their direct sales efforts. People pounding the pavement and talking to other people and reaching out to individuals who uh, are decision makers, more or less. Uh, Business publications account for about 26% of the B2B advertising. When we were advertising for Learning Zone Express, we would fly our salespeople all over the country for trade shows. Trade shows were a huge part of our advertising budget because it would provide us direct contact to people in that industry. Now, when we look at implications for an international advertisement, it's important to get different types of media because habits for people in other countries are not the same as those in the United States. And media buying process is different as well. Culture is a major force in what makes it different. This is a brief overview of Chapter 8 and some additional information from what I've been able to do in my career. So I hope you found it useful. Feel free to give me a call or reach out to me if you have any questions.